Wading into War, Chapter 11. I pulled out the gun and held it to the light. Sure enough, it was my gun, or rather, my father's gun, that I inherited. The corpse had bullets that matched my gun. Berman would run ballistics tests himself and then plaster the results on a billboard. He'd have way too much pleasure in bringing me down. "You don't play fair," I growled, putting the gun back in my suit pocket. "Come on." We tiptoed toward the back of the house. "Who said anything about fair?" she retorted, following close behind. "This is war, mister. The sooner you realize that, the sooner you can start doing something about it. But we're not at—" "Yes," she spat. "We are." Footsteps sounded on the front steps, the wood creaking under the weight. I held my fingers to my lips. I opened the back door, and the police tape fluttered in the breeze. We hurried across the backyard and through the rear gate. We were just making our way along the driveway when the neighbor's wife looked out the window and saw us. She let out a piercing scream. I grabbed Lillian's hand and we ran to my car. I didn't have time to be a gentleman. She would have to open the door herself. We climbed in and sped off. After a few minutes of weaving in and around traffic and doubling back, I gave her a sidelong glance. "How'd you follow me?" "I didn't." She fished a cigarette out of her purse and lit it. "I knew that if you had the chance, you'd probably return to the house. I didn't have time to go inside before the police showed up. I just camped behind the garage and waited for you." She blew out the smoke of her nose. "Find anything?" I paused a moment, debating on what to say. Donnelly had pretty much implied Lillian was a spy. Could I trust her? I stayed silent. "What did Donnelly tell you about me?" I equivocated. "Not much, really. Said you were helping him?" "That's true." She blew smoke out of her mouth. "But it's not the whole story." "What's the whole story?" "I'm not sure I want to tell you. The less you know, the less you'll be able to hinder me. But I'll say this. The part about my brother is true. He really is in Europe. Probably running for his life." "You sent Rosenblatt to Europe? Or did Uncle Sam?" "A bit of both. Our interests were aligned, so we worked out an arrangement that was good for the government and for me." I scowled. "What happens if the interests no longer align? Which side do you choose?" She blew a smoke ring and lassoed the rearview mirror. "You're the detective. What do you think?" I tried a new angle. "What are these documents Rosenblatt had? Why are they so important?" She killed the cigarette in the ashtray and stared out the windshield. "That information is almost more important than my brother, and I'm definitely not going to tell you details about them because, frankly, I haven't seen any of them." "What?" I said. "You have no idea what they are?" "Not really. I know Wendell considered them crucial to the war effort." She held up a finger. "I know we're not at war, but it's coming. I think even the isolationists deep in their heart know we cannot avoid it." I mulled over that for a moment. Whatever Rosenblatt had was worth his life, but it was also worth the efforts of both the U.S. government and Nazi sympathizers here in America. And it seemed to me that Lillian was using whatever leverage she had to inject herself into this equation, and damned if I didn't find myself in the middle of it too. But I had an idea. Surely I wasn't the only one who had suspected Rosenblatt might have mailed the documents to himself, or to someone else. Hell, I would probably have done it too, if I were in his shoes. And I had an angle on where they might be. "I need to make a phone call and get a beer," I said. "We're going to a little diner that might be a little lower than you're used to." "I wasn't always this wealthy," she purred. "I was born poor and worked my way up." I didn't ask her what kind of work she had done to advance her pay in society. Bubba's Barbecue was located south of downtown, just off Fannin. It was one of those places to go for the best tasting barbecue this side of Austin. It barely qualified as a restaurant. It looked more like a rundown shack than a fine eatery. The air was pungent with smoke and meat, and Lillian visibly cringed when we walked in. I nodded to Bubba. He was stationed behind the counter by a large cutting board, wet with grease and fat. His dark skin shone in the overhead heating lamps. a sweat ring banding his chef's hat. "You want something?" I asked Lillian. "To leave here?" Derision dripped from her voice. I smiled and turned to Bubba. "1 chopped beef sandwich and 2 Lone Stars." A few minutes later, I picked up the food and the cold bottles sweating from the condensation and paid for them. We got a table near the middle to keep an eye on the front door while providing an easy escape out the back, if necessary. Leaving Lillian to wipe the table with a series of paper napkins, I moseyed back to the phone booth. I closed the door and pulled out all my coins, stacking them on the phone. Remembering the name of the post office store printed on the receipt I burned, I called to find out when they closed. They stayed open late during the week. Good. Next, I dialed Gordon Gardner. He picked up on the first ring. "Gordon," I said, "it's me. You busy?" "Only covering your ass and mine, trying to explain to the cops why I drove you over to get your car." From behind him came the sounds of typewriters clanking away. "You were just helping a friend." I tried to soothe him before I dropped my request. If there was a tally sheet, my side would be full of debts owed to Gardner. Time to add another to the list. "Listen," I said, tracing my finger along the edge of the booth's little glass window. "I need a favor." Gordon snorted. "Of course you do. What is it now? Lie to the police? You know, I got put on a short lease after that thing with the horses." I grimaced. "Yeah, I know. This one's big, though. Aren't they all?" "You have a point. But this one really is. It involves the war." "Yeah?" he said. I knew Gardner had just sat up straighter in his chair. He thought a lot like Lillian Saxton. War with Europe was inevitable. It was only a matter of time. "Yeah," I repeated. "What do you want?" "I need you to impersonate a dead man."